Hi, everybody, and welcome. This is my podcast of art, animals, and spirit. This episode is called A Midnight Horse Rescue. My name is Shelley Devine. I am a spiritual medium, award-winning intuitive artist, Reiki master, and a number one bestseller. Oh, best-selling author. Sorry. The following is a true story filled with bravery, compassion, intuition, and deep connection between human and animals. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. Um, okay, so have you ever found yourself in a surreal moment? It felt like you were dreaming. Um, well, that happened to me when I was 13. I faced one of the most terrifying yet magical, unforgettable experiences of my life. It's a midnight rescue that showed me how intuitive and how brave I was. So I think I was about 13, 14 years old when my mother and I moved into a tiny trailer behind a horse stables in Prescott, Arizona. We moved in after a short period of homelessness. Um, that happens. Um, and we got in this trailer and it was tiny, but it was a home. But the place was crawling with bugs, and other nasty critters, of course. Of course it was. It was in the desert, right? So one night I was sleeping in my tiny bed opposite the trailer from my mom's room when a little moth flew into my ear. Oh my gosh. I could hear it buzzing in there. It was a horrible feeling. And I'm trying to dig it out and get it out of my ear, but I couldn't. So what my mom did um, was pretty genius. She heated up a little bit of cooking oil, just like warmed it up, and then poured it into my ear to drown the moth. It worked. The fluttering stopped. The oil, along with the moth, eventually drained out of my ear. One more time, I just want to say, ew. Okay. On another occasion, I walked out the front door of our little trailer, and there was a tarantula blocking my path. I froze. Then slowly, slow as I could manage, I backed up and shut the front door. My heart was pounding in my chest. Yes, I am terrified of tarantulas and a lot of scary spiders. Just saying. But I waited inside for him to pass. It's actually a small one. It was just a baby tarantula, but still, I was not going to mess with him. Okay, so here's the cool story. One night I was woken up by the sound of galloping hooves all around me. And at first I thought I was dreaming. So I laid there for a minute wondering, am I dreaming or am I really hearing this? So I looked at the clock. It was midnight. And then I heard horses whinnying. They sounded pretty close. There was more than one. So I realized some horses from the stables right down the hill from us probably got loose. So I jumped out of bed to check on my mare, Chelsea, who was in a pen behind our trailer and make sure it wasn't her running around because she had gotten loose on occasion. So I checked she was there. She was safely in her pen. And then I realized I was right. It was the horses from the stables below. Without hesitation, I tried to help catch the horses. I ran outside in the pitch dark, no shoes, in my pajamas, just to go help catch these horses. So the area around where I lived, the whole hill down to the stables was just a whole bunch of bushes, like desert bushes, so they're scratchy. But I carefully made my way in the pitch dark blackness that surrounded me with those bushes and shrubs scratching me as I weaved through them. My heart was pounding in my ears and my adrenaline was flowing. I did my best to help round up the horses. I don't remember how many there were loose, but there was at least five or six of them that had gotten loose. Um, and when horses get loose, they get really excited and they're really hard to catch, especially in the pitch black in the desert with lots of places for them to run. But I did my best. I helped. And once all the horses were caught and put back in their corrals, I turned around and carefully returned up the hill to my trailer. We had no exterior lights, so it was very, very dark. Like, can't see my hand in front of my face dark. As I picked my way up the path, I heard a horse sneeze, and it sounded really, really close. And it wasn't Chelsea because I was not up to the trailer yet. It's about halfway between the trailer and the barn. So I knew it wasn't my girl. She was still in her pen and behind the trailer. So, no, the sound was close to me on the path leading up to the trailer. I stopped in my tracks and I listened intently. I felt drawn, kind of like this pulling to a certain area. And so I started to slowly move in that direction and really tried to get my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Finally, I thought I saw like a silhouette of a lone horse standing in the bushes. Again, I was like, well, is this my imagination or is there really a horse there? Um, but because of when he sneezed or made a sound, I knew it was a real horse. And he wasn't trying to move or run from me. So that was weird. So I instantly knew something was wrong. The area, like I said, all those bushes, there was an old barbed wire fence. And, some of it was taken down, some of it was still up, but the bushes kind of hid it. So I slowly inched towards the horse, who was clearly frightened, but stood perfectly still. I softly talked to him and told him that I was there to help. Animals are very, very sensitive and they can sense your fear, which makes them fearful. And I've ridden and trained many horses in my life, and I usually get on the ones that are really nervous. And I just, as long as I am calm and confident, it actually calms the horse down. So again, I told him I was there to help and talked really softly to him. Took a deep breath, released any fear or tension that I was feeling. I did this for about a minute before I reached up to touch the horse. I slowly reached out into the darkness until I felt him. He was breathing heavily and sweaty. His coat was wet. I ran my hands all over him, starting from the rear and working my way up to his head. When he didn't try to move away from me, I knew something was very wrong. It was so dang dark, I couldn't see anything. Um, so I slowly ran my hands down his front legs. I knew what I was going to find, barbed wire. I did. The poor guy had gotten both of his front legs caught in the barbed wire. I called out for someone to help, but no one heard me. Everybody was back down at the barn. I couldn't leave him alone to get help. I was afraid that he would panic, right? It just didn't feel right to leave him. And I knew I had to save this horse. I had to get him untangled by myself. And so what I did was I reached down and freed one leg at a time by pulling the barbed wire apart and lifting his leg out. And I did that until both legs were freed. And that it took some time, but I had to do it slowly. I cut my hands up pretty good. on the barbed wire, and I was sure the horse had some serious cuts too. Although we were both a bit bloody from the barbs and the bushes, I don't think there was I didn't think there was any serious injuries to worry about. So now that he was free from the wire, he stood there next to me patiently as I wondered, how am I going to get him down to the barn? He didn't have a halter on. And I didn't want to leave him to go get a halter because I thought he would run back into the barbed wire. So what I did was I grabbed a bit of his mane high up on his neck and just tugged a little, and sure enough, he followed me. He put his head down, relaxed, and let me lead him back to the stables by his mane. The guys at the stables were a little shocked to see me leading the horse into the barn with my jammies and my bare feet. And we were both bloody. So it was probably quite a shock to them. But they thanked me. And I gave the horse a little kiss on his face and tucked him in his stall, safe and sound. And when I walked back home under the stars and felt proud of myself, I felt guided and protected by a higher power during the rescue. I felt the gratitude of the horse and almost this unbreakable connection between us. I had always felt a deep understanding of animals and their ability to communicate and trust. They can sense gentle, compassionate energy, which I have, and I've always been able to communicate with them. I still do. I often give readings to people, and their pets come through with messages for them. So, sometimes our greatest acts of courage come when we least expect them. And often animals remind us of the strength and compassion that we are capable of. I encourage you, listeners, to reflect on a moment in your lives where you had a deep connection to an animal, or where you pushed beyond your limits and helped another being. Think about that. I'm so grateful that you guys joined me on this deeply personal journey and listened. I would love to hear about your stories of animal encounters or acts of courage. Who knows? Maybe I'll read your story on my podcast. So I'll put it in the link below, but email me at art.animals.spirit@gmail.com. I hope you'll join me for our next episode of Art, Animals, and Spirit. This is Shelley Devine signing out. Thanks again for listening.